Welcome everyone to the Eugene City Council work session for July 20th. We have just had a very, very short executive session where nobody said anything, and then we moved right into the regular session, which is on the city manager's annual performance review. Alana?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Alana Holmes, Human Resources Director with the City of Eugene, here today with Denise Smith to conduct a work session on City Manager Reese performance evaluation. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Denise, who has worked closely to support this process with all of you.
Just briefly, you've got your booklets. You got your booklets that you received on Monday that has the complete information. And unless anyone has any questions for me about the process or information at this time, I'll turn it over to the council and city manager.
So I would just ask Denise, before you do that, would you just tell people what's in the, very briefly, what's in the packet so people will know what went into the evaluation?
You bet. What we have is City Manager Reese's self-evaluation. We also have survey data that we collected from community members and members of the union leadership, and then also city employees. And then we also have the individual evaluations from the council members, and then also the collated information. And the final page of the booklet is the calculation of compensation based on his contract.
Thank you for that. And I would just like to say that all counselors have participated in the evaluation. It is summer, and we do have some counselors who are not here today. We've got one on the phone. Counselor Brown is on the phone. Counselor Clark will be arriving later during the meeting, and Counselor Farr is not in town right now. So but everybody's participated and been part of this evaluation. I just wanted to make that clear. City Manager, did you have some things you wanted to say before we begin here?
I will, Mayor. Thank you very much. And just to reiterate, this has been a really enjoyable year, a real productive year for us on city staff. As I've mentioned on numerous times, we have a very talented staff here and are able to get a lot of things done. And I look forward to this next year working together on some pretty challenging issues, and but know that we'll have some pretty productive conversations with that. So I appreciate your guidance and comments that you've made.
Thank you. So I will start off and just make a few comments, and then we'll give everybody their chance to speak. So each of us were given the opportunity to say many things in the evaluation, but I'll just bring up a few things. First, to express in general my appreciation for your work, City Manager, in this last year. And then to say that, in particular, things that I really want to comment on today is your ability to work with others to help them achieve their goals, and that includes the community, the staff, and council, and dealing with many views and many personalities. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I think you do a really good job of being a respected voice and face for our community, and I appreciate that very much. Secondly, I appreciate that your work to help grow our staff's capacity for quality leadership throughout the organization. In that, I think that you have demonstrated leadership, and I also think it builds our community and our council's confidence in the work of our staff and the work of our city, and that's good for all of us. So I appreciate that very much. I appreciate that you like to solve problems and are good at it, and you have a can-do attitude as opposed to why we can't, and I really do appreciate that a lot. I think you in general have a glass half full approach to things as opposed to the glass half empty approach. I think personally you've been very good for me to work with, and in a very good and professional way. I appreciate your follow-through on the goals and the excellent work you've done. Eugene Counts is just one of those things. And I have to say I really appreciate the work you've done to care about the health and well-being of staff. I think that's a very important thing. We're in very tough times. We ask a lot of everybody, and I think for you to demonstrate the concern you have for the well-being of staff is really important and good. I think that everything, I just want to say in terms of the future, I just hope we keep on going with gaining economic stability, safety, and taking care of our infrastructure, that we keep on an eye on the community need for economic development that fits our values. this thing of needing jobs and people being able to care for their families has got to continue to be at the top of all of our lists. I hope you'll keep on with the effort that we're going to be the best. And I hope we'll keep on sharing goals and look forward to doing many great things together. I think together we're stronger, together as council and staff, and together as City of Eugene, along with our other partners throughout the community. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And I will start with George Poling.
First of all, I'm sure we all either got the copy of the letter or the email that John sent out, and this will cover this. I don't know if it's later on in this discussion or not, where he's based on the city's financial situation. He's voluntarily said that he will not accept the 5% merit increase, which I think speaks tons for the caliber of the city manager that we have, and I really appreciate that. The fact that John will look at everywhere he can to save any amount of money, including his own wallet, and I really sincerely appreciate that. I think, John, you do an excellent job keeping the council, for the most part, informed on what's going on and emerging issues. Your ability to work with the leadership from the other jurisdictions is proving to be very valuable to us. You took on the task of leading not only the city staff, but the budget committee and the council through a very tough budget process this year. And although, and I did mention it down in later, I think you took one of the ideas presented a little too personally, but you did, as far as the budget was concerned, in the end, you did willingly work with council and with staff to come up with a creative way to help fund the project, the services that the council identified. You've proven yourself over and over again as an organizational leader, which is obvious because you're constantly challenging your staff to come up with creative ways of delivering services in a better and more efficient way, as well as saving the money. The only real criticism, I think, is sometimes, or the only negative I think that I could say is sometimes you take some of the constructive criticism that council gives you a little too personally. It's not personal, John, it's business. So, but you do manage to continue on and eventually, carry out our direction in a very positive way. And in the past, I've seen that not work that way. So I appreciate that also. And I just think, in summary, I just think we, as a city, are very, very fortunate to have the type of city manager that we have. And I can't say enough about the work that John has done for us, and I'm pleased that he's here for the long haul. And I thank you very much for your work.
Alan.
Yeah, I too wanted to express appreciation for the offer to decline the 5% merit increase. I think that speaks volumes about your leadership and where we are. So I very much appreciate that. I think you very much deserve it. It's your choice to decline it, and I respect that. You've exceeded my expectations yet again, so thank you very much. I too think we're very fortunate to have a person of your caliber in the chair that you sit at. I think you've established a really good team around you that's very competent, and I very much appreciate your calm demeanor and can-do attitude. I think that's permeated the entire organization and it's created an expectation about problem solving and solving problems and success within the city. So I think that's a hallmark of your accomplishments this year. But I think probably the most important thing, and the first bullet I said, what were your major accomplishments, in big bold letters and capitals with an exclamation point, I said leadership, because I very much appreciate your leadership, especially around the budget and Vision Eugene, but the budget in these economic times. You've led the city towards stability and customer service while cutting the budget pretty dramatically, especially in the general fund. And the last two budgets, I think, have been little minor miracles that we haven't had a lot of controversy around them, and I think it's been a hallmark of both the finance staff and the rest of the staff putting together the budgets, but also your leadership on that. And I think your leadership and vision around Envision Eugene has made it uniquely successful in Oregon. I see all these talked up other folks in other places that are either floundering or getting sued or in their 10th year of trying to get something approved, and ours looks like it's heading in the right direction. Of course, as I said in my notes, this is the 80-20 rule in spades. We did the 80. The next 20% is going to take 80% of the effort. It's the tough part. So overall, excellent job. I still think we need to, a couple of areas, improve the EPD, police department, community relationship. I think that's a lot better. We're not there yet. I think we've improved, but I think we still need to continue on the management-union relationship. I think that's better and still needs some attention. And then I agree with the mayor. Infrastructure, jobs, and facilitating business development, both new and existing, is a real going to be something I'm going to focus on the next year as well, because I think the city's role in jobs is really around the infrastructure part, as our roads thing is. And I have a couple other comments I'll take on the next round.
Debbie?
I don't know that I have anything to say that I didn't put down on the form, but I think one of the best things, not the best, but one of the best things is that you can take criticism, which is, and I think that is something that we haven't found in previous managers, that we've had some people have great difficulty if you disagree with them on anything, and I think you've been very good about accepting other opinions. But my top focus would be on neighborhood livability, and the rights of individuals and things of that sort, more than, I don't really think cities create jobs. I think you make it possible for people to create jobs. But so I guess I'm a right-wing conservative.
There's jobs right outside there that are being created by city.
Well, yeah. I think one thing I said that I've said to John before, and I said it here, we almost had ORI in the Sears pit some years ago, and I think if John had been city manager at that time, it would have happened. What happened was they had some difficulties, and they weren't helped to get over the difficulties. And I think I really liked the way when Beam was having difficulties, you said, we can do this for you, and how about trying this, and instead of saying, oh, we give up. But I hope we don't create another pit here on this site. It's good that we're filling some empty spaces. It looks. I just looked at those this morning over in Willamette. It looks great, but we don't want to leave an ugly hole here. And I think that's all I want to say right now.
Chris, how about you?
It's always hard whenever you're, I don't want to say delivering a Valentine, but sure is nice to know that you've done a good job. And sometimes you don't get as much recognition for doing a good job as you do for doing a bad job. So I think it's important that we do take the time to celebrate what a great job you have done. And I think really my comment summarizes what I feel, that you really are the right person in the right place at the right time. And I think your unique skills allow us to take advantage of that unique time. You come in as a person who understands this community, and I was pleased at how quickly you grasped this community, which some people that have lived here for 20 years never really quite grasped this community, and you did. And you understood the need for this community to be interactive and collaborative and creative, and I think you have made that a strong suit instead of something that you're always fighting against. And I think that has made it much easier for the community to get things done. But it's also been something that's helped you to interact, I think, well with us as a council. I think we are getting things done that couldn't have been done before. The fact that we've got pits being filled, we've got buildings being built, we've got streets getting fixed, we've got things happening that hadn't happened for years. We can take some credit for, but we can only be effective up to the point where the staff and you make that happen. And that's why being the right place at the right time is important. And I know you would be the first one to say that your ability to be an effective leader depends on your ability to free the people that work with you to also do that. And I appreciate the fact that you give them the freedom to be innovative and creative. A good leader knows how to do that, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about you, is you don't try to manage everything. You understand that you have good people who can do good work, and you let them do it. And we let you do it, and I think that's why we have a nexus right now that is unprecedented. And we should take absolute advantage of every moment of it, because it's here, it's now, and you're in place, and we're in place, and they are in place, and we can get things done. And that I find incredibly exciting. And the degree to which you're at the center of that, I think, is a real value to not only us, but to the community as a whole. So you're not just a gift to me, you're a gift to Eugene. And from that standpoint, I think it's really great. And as everyone else said, you absolutely deserve the merit money that you should receive, but you're also a great enough leader to recognize that you're a part of a community that needs what it needs. And I am incredibly appreciative of the fact that you're willing to forego that in these conditions.
George Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have too much to add other than my written comments. I already left my trip, so I didn't get Monday's packet with the other counselors' evaluations. I look forward to that when I get back. I just want to reiterate that I really do appreciate manager and staff balancing the budget and still delivering an acceptable level of services after asking all the departments to make sacrifices. And I really think that it's very admirable, the manager's foregoing of his merit raise. It just kind of sets the tone for everyone else, the bargaining units and all the rest of the staff. And I when times improve, then you can take advantage of that. My only criticism really was I really just thought that there was kind of an over-reliance on the services, the mediation services, Bob Shadwick during Envision Eugene. I think it went on a little too long, maybe help things up a little bit. But I realized, that we're in uncharted waters there. And so, you have to cast around and try to figure it all out. And I think eventually we'll get where we need to go and come up with a really good solution to all the things we have to decide on. Otherwise, I guess that's about it. Don't have too much to add. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Andrea?
Well, Mayor, going last, everybody has stole everything I was going to say. I know, but it's like I was sitting here thinking, okay, well, I'll say that. No, but now this person said that.
Elizabeth Taylor's 8,000.
Yes. There you go. But I do agree with a lot of what has been said. And what really kind of sitting here listening to what people say, what resonates with me is that you have set the tone. When in working in the emergency room, we have had a lot of younger staff, and the newer physicians don't realize the incredible power they have about setting the tone within the department. And I think that's what you've done, is you've set a different tone. And it's a high bar, and everybody underneath you has risen to the challenge. And I really agree with the comments about your leadership ability to encourage people to try it on. Like a coat, and sometimes it'll fit and sometimes it won't, but the ones, you can only excel. I mean, it's only a good thing for people to have those experiences to know if they want to continue in that direction. The other thing I don't think was mentioned here was your own personal time of what you do volunteering in the community. I don't know if any of you have seen the PSA that he did with several other people around veterans. And that isn't in your job, but that is part of who you are and your commitment to this community. It's very evident to me that, you and your wife are here to stay, and that this is your community. So, and I don't have any criticism at all. I think if you don't take things personal, then you're not human. So, I mean, and I have a hissy fit every now and then.
Now and then.
And I try and get over it. I think it's human. It's a human trait to get upset when your thoughts or your question, what you believe in is questioned. And so, I identify with that. I only think that that's part of the experience that we're all having here, being at this table together, making this decision for this community at this point in time. So, I wouldn't expect you to be totally, blank at all times. So, like everybody has said everything else, and I really do appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate your email regarding the merit raise. I think that is really, it's a new day in this community. It's a different world right now, and people are doing that, and it's not an expectation, but it sure is good that you chose to do that, John. Thank you.
So Alan has not second round, but before that, a couple things that I wanted to say is I do think this is a time to acknowledge that we've had a lot of success with a lot of challenging things, but there are more difficulties ahead, and we're all going to have to work together even stronger and harder and together. And so I just think we got to put that out there for us. And one of the things that I really means a lot to me is that I think you really like Eugene. And I think you really like living here. And that matters a lot to me, because I think that means that you care about our city. And that's really important to me. So I wanted to, and then I guess the other thing I'd put out here as I was listening to other people is I think the unresolved things, a couple of them that we have many, but among the ones that have not been mentioned is, and you've heard me talk about this, this will be a council goal kind of thing, but I'll put it out there that I think we have to be working continuously at this homeless or unhoused issue that's so big in our community. And then I think the other thing is that we have a lot of issues about good things for youth to do. And so those are both sort of things that we haven't really leaned heavily into yet. And we've done some good work, but I think we have to do more good work on that. And so I just wanted to put that out there for you to think about. Alan?
I wanted to point out one more thing that it's not criticism, it's something I think that we need to work on, and I thought this was an appropriate time. The one part of the budget in my business, and I see in the city's budget as well, is this issue of healthcare costs are just continuing to be out of control, and I would challenge you to put your creative juices towards helping solve that problem. I think that you have a real knack of looking outside the box, and without sacrificing the service or making the employees pay higher costs and balancing that part of the budget on their backs, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for creative ways to do this. There's been some really innovative stuff around this country where people pulled in clinics into their organizations and saved costs, and other different things like self-financing and things that have really worked. And I think I challenge you to look at that over the next couple of years, because I think that's continually just eating our budget, and we just kind of accept it when I think maybe there's things we can do about it. But besides your leadership in the budget and Vision Eugene, which I think was very visionary, bold, and so far successful, but we still have a ways to go, I just wanted to point out that keeping the focus on the Climate and Energy Action Plan and funding that position in the budget was, I think, very a big accomplishment, and implementing that is going to be a big thing for the next year. And then engaging the staff and creating this empowerment, I think everybody said that, is really incredible stuff, because it allows that attitude of can-do and success to permeate, and continuing the relationship building with not only the council but our strategic partners. I think personally we have a very good working relationship, and I think most of the councilors would agree that they do too. And so I think working with our strategic partners as well is something that you've done extremely well over the last 2 years. And then and downtown development is, I guess we've been an overnight success after 10 years, but the closer is really, really, really important, because if you don't get there at the end, it doesn't make any difference what you've done. And so, getting over the hump and putting all those pieces together at the end I think is a major accomplishment for downtown, and allowed us to fill those 2 pits. So, overall, excellent job this year, John. Thank you.
Betty?
Thank you. As I said before, I wrote down everything, but I was just reminded, I think your work with the Arts and Business Alliance is a very great thing. I do have some reservations about some things, but I want to make a motion. I move to accept the city manager's offer to forego the 5% merit increase.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. George Brown?
Yes.
6 in favor and none in opposition. Passes. Thank you. And I think we're about ready to move on with a big thank you. my final comment, because I feel like I have to say that, is I so much appreciate the work you've done to sort of build that triple bottom line analysis into all the work we're doing. I think it will help us make better decisions that take into account all of those things, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, John. I'm going to do something we have unprecedented. I'm just going to thank you.
Thanks to staff for a good job putting this together in a very short period of time.
Thank you very, very much.
We'll try next time to be do better.
We're going to transition into the next item, multi-unit property tax exemption.
You up?
Yeah, do I get a promise?
I'll bring it in.
Pause?
No, I'm good.
I know that
It's right there.
we're going to move now into this next item, and I know they're going to lay it out for us, but just for the people who are listening, this is the beginning of a longer discussion on MUPTI. We are not making a lot of decisions about it today, but we're really, I think, reconsidering the use of it and where it's most appropriate and most effectively can be used. We think and acknowledge we have a relatively small toolbox to use, and so using it well is very important, and that's why we want to have this conversation. Now I'll turn it over to City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will turn it over to Lisa to get us started on this conversation.
Great, thanks, John. Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Gardner, Planning Director. Today we're going to be talking to you about MUPTI within the context of Envision Eugene. As you're well aware, over the past 2 years, the council, community, and staff have spent considerable time talking about Envision Eugene. Specifically, we have been shaping and articulating community values for livability, including economic development, jobs, housing, and parks. Our conversation has started to translate into how these values will shape our urban form, how we want Eugene to look and feel over the next 20 years. Part of that conversation, as the mayor just said, includes looking at what type of tools we'll need to implement the developing policy framework into what it looks like on the ground in terms of desired development and redevelopment for our community. Today we want to talk to you about one specific tool that's currently in our toolbox, the multi-unit property tax exemption, or MUPTI, and how it has and can continue to move our community towards our goals of compact, dense urban development. So as you know, the Envision Eugene draft proposal is built on 7 pillars that you're quite familiar with by now. 2 pillars in particular we'll be talking about today: promoting compact urban development and efficient transportation options, and protect, repair, and enhance neighborhood livability. Consistent with statewide planning goals and our local community values, we know that we want to use our land as efficiently as possible, limiting the need for an urban growth boundary expansion. The analysis and community conversations both to date have suggested that there's broad agreement around the need not to expand the urban growth boundary for multi-family housing and for commercial uses within our 20-year framework. This doesn't mean that commercial and multifamily development can't happen within a potential expansion area if there's a market demand. What it does mean is that we want to focus and encourage this kind of development along our core areas in the city, that we want to use our land as efficiently as possible and maximize the benefit of our existing transportation system. Our community resource group has spent a lot of time talking about how to make compact urban development happen. We took a bus tour of potential redevelopment sites. We've talked about barriers that exist in our current code, and we discussed financial challenges that in developing mixed-use and multifamily housing in our core areas. One of the key strategies, you can do the next thing. One of the key strategies under the compact urban development pillar is pretty simply stated to make compact urban development easier. So that means in today's economy, what kinds of things can we do? We need to fill our toolbox with tools that make it easier to do the right thing. We don't have a lot of tools available to us, but MUPTI is one that we have currently available to us. Throughout the Envision Eugene process, we've also spent a lot of time talking about how to protect existing neighborhoods, how to accommodate multifamily housing in a way that works and is compatible within our existing neighborhoods. In addition to putting multifamily housing along transit corridors and close to commercial areas, we've also talked throughout the Envision Eugene process about opportunity siting as a way that can facilitate identifying potential development sites and engaging, involving our neighborhoods in developing support of nearby residents. One of the key strategies under the livability pillar is implementing opportunity siting program. The program includes a very specific toolbox, as you see up there, that includes regulatory, facilitative, and financial tools, specifically including MUPD. Probably most importantly, the process requires a high level of neighborhood engagement in the process. I'm going to turn it to Nan at this point.
Hi, I'm Nan Lawrence, a senior planner in the Development Division, and I'll give you some details about the MUPD program. As Lisa noted, MUPD is an implementation tool for Envision Eugene. MUPD is a tool that shapes how and where our community grows by closing demonstrable gaps that prevent desired multifamily housing development from moving forward. So the MUPD tax exemption helps projects meet requirements for financing that have now financing is now more difficult to get. And it meets the community's goal for compact urban growth. It also meets the city's goal of increasing the tax base when these projects come back on the tax roll. As you know, Council approves these projects on a case-by-case basis. We participate in this program by local ordinance, and our local ordinance expires January 1st of 2012. Here's how it works. Each project is evaluated based on criteria in the ordinance, and if approved, a project is eligible for a 10-year tax exemption of the value of the improvements. In other words, the structure that is built on the land. The land is still taxed. The project pays full taxes for land and improvements after 10 years. 22 projects over 30 years have been built. A wide range of projects, including ownership, rental, some with studios, some with as many as 5-bedroom units, larger projects, smaller projects, infill. All types of multifamily projects have resulted from this program so far. And here's the location of those projects. They cluster around the downtown core. I'm showing the downtown plan boundary here as a reference. So Council has changed the program over time, and we can do so again. The MUPD boundary has contracted or expanded based on Council policy. I'm showing the original boundary from 1977. It was actually a donut that excluded the downtown core. So here's the 1989 boundary, shown in green, expanding in all directions. 1992 and 93, specifically into West University, picking up the downtown core in 2002. Just a little change added in 2003 to the south, again expanding to the east in 2004, and the MUPD boundary in 2008, which is the current boundary. So here's that boundary by itself, again with the downtown plan boundary for reference.
Can you go back to that? So the current downtown, which we're going to be talking about today, borders on 13?
Yes. 13 and then moves up to 11th.
Does the boundary in the train song, is it the middle of the road, or does it include the stuff on the west side of Pioneer Night? Well, maybe so that's not a corridor. It's just the east side.
It's considered a transit-oriented area. I don't know. I'm assuming that it. I better not assume. Do you have that answer?
East side.
It's just the east side.
Yeah, so just pointing that out. It's not both sides of the street right now.
So Council has contracted or expanded based on your decision, your recommendation, your policies.
Yeah, right. That was the train song neighborhood, right, Andrea? Which is the middle of the road, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So in terms of boundary considerations,
My ward is different than the boundary.
as has been done in the past, Council can modify the boundary. New areas must comply with these criteria. They need to be either core area or transit-oriented area with a quarter mile of transit. and the projects within the transit-oriented area need to facilitate access to public transportation. Up until now, our program has mirrored the state program. The state recently extended the sunset date statewide to 2022, but our program still sunsets January 1st, 2012. This sunset date has implications particularly for downtown. There's a lot of momentum in our downtown right now. So to continue that momentum, it's important to support projects that are coming forward, including 858 Pearl and the Taco Time building. Both of these projects have indicated that MUPD is critical for these downtown housing projects to move forward. The state program also changed to allow the ability to exempt commercial areas to support development of mixed-use buildings. Council could use this as an additional tool to encourage mixed-use development downtown on a case-by-case basis. And if Council chooses, this might also be important to support mixed use as a desired form of development to implement Envision Eugene recommendations. The recommendation for phasing allows Council to start with downtown and then coming back after Council break with a proposed ordinance and public hearing to extend the sunset date for the downtown plan area as Phase 1. This would support those projects that we know are coming forward and continue the current momentum of downtown development. Later then, as the implementation of Envision Eugene comes into sharper focus, looking at other areas, along transit corridors, other important commercial areas, and considering the range of actions and incentives, perhaps including MUPD, that are needed to help the community realize its goals around development form, character, and density.
And I'd just like to add, if I can, the Planning Commission on Monday had a conversation around MUPD, and they indicated that as the conversations look at where else in the community this could be applied, they'd like to have the opportunity to weigh in on this.
We're available for questions, and we're interested in your conversation.
Mayor, your question was really a key question, and so I just want to make sure that if the council, if you want to look on page 15 of your agenda, that denotes the boundary that we're talking about today, and it's been up there, but that is the boundary that, if you choose to accept the recommendation, is the only place that would be moving forward at this time to accommodate those projects. So that's just
The downtown plan area.
Yes, it's that
Inside the
white line, inside the white line.
Okay, I've got Andrea in the queue and then Betty.
I'd like to be in the queue also, Mayor.
All right, George. Gotcha.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you get Alan?
I did. I've got Andrea, Betty, Alan, and George.
Trying to make sure, you know.
Yep.
So I just want to open by saying that I support MUPDs as a tool to encourage development where it is necessary. I have also wanted to make a statement that I would no longer support MUPDs in the university area. I think that it's met its saturation point and that it's time to change how we look down there. I'm definitely in support of keeping the MUPD on the books as a tool, you know, in the future, and I don't want to do anything to preclude or to concern anybody that they aren't going to be able to continue on a project that they had already started. So, John, am I understanding that you just want to, at this point in time, extend that area there?
Well, yes. Well, we're asking.
On 12, or like, and so what about the Train Song area and all that other area? I mean, would that affect that? Because there have been a couple of developments in the Whitaker area that were just outside, like the back part of the block that, you know, faces the street, that people were interested in doing development, but because the MUPD wasn't available for them, they couldn't do it. And so I'm just kind of wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I think we're asking for really a couple of phase approach. Today, it's just strictly this area, which allows a couple of the downtown projects to have certainty around that MUPD. The Train Song area and the rest of the areas and any potentially new areas would be part of the conversation between now and as we move towards the end of the calendar year, and then the council can choose to include any or all or none of those areas or new areas into it. So this is the first of a series of conversation that allow council to talk about
And John, could you
MUPDs.
clarify or have somebody clarify? Because if somebody had a project now, they couldn't get it done by the
End of the year.
So maybe you
If
can,
they submitted an application now, I can't imagine how they would be able to finish by the end of the year,
Finish
the project,
yeah.
and therefore qualify.
So what you're asking, so I'm just clarifying for myself, maybe you all have it, but I don't. So what you're asking for us to do is to not sunset, allow for this part to be sunsetted, for it to continue in the future, and then we're going to be having other conversations about other areas of how the MUPD areas are going to look.
right, and
Is that correct?
the action today would not presuppose an outcome for any of those other
Yes, I
areas.
understand that, but I'm just
Right.
trying to get it in my mind, because I read this and it just didn't make sense to me.
But if I could add on to that, it could include areas that would currently within MUPD, but will be sunsetting at the end of this year, as well as other new areas we talked about, whether it's the South Willamette as part of opportunity siting, we might look at that. I mean, it's really, where do we need to apply these tools to keep our Envision Eugene implementation process moving forward? So it could be, but we'll bring those back to you in pieces, basically in
But-
phases.
So so for these projects downtown, it's going to take more than 6 months. So we want to make sure that the MUPD is available for them going forward into the next year. Okay, got that clear. Thank you.
Before I call the next person in the queue, I just want to point out to you all that there is a MUPD application for Alder Park Apartments on our agenda for July 25th.
Where's that?
So that's currently on our
Outside of
calendar.
downtown.
It's outside of downtown.
Outside of downtown. So I just want to point that out to you. Okay.
Alder and, what?
What's the Alder and what then?
Betty, you're next.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to be clear, what's the eastern boundary on that? What street is that?
Hilliard.
That goes right over into the university area there.
That's the downtown plan boundary. There's a little portion of the downtown plan area that does overlap with West University, but in all of our documents in the downtown plan, in particular, this is the boundary that we use for everything downtown.
Well, I would like to exempt that part, but I will support the downtown core. So the south boundary then is 13th, right?
Yes, it's actually showing the properties that face onto 13th.
I would prefer 11th, but I could support this. I don't like this idea that they can't build the properties without MUFTI. They're sure they'd like to get the tax exemption, but people can build. Maybe not these two right downtown, but mostly they could have built them without that. Do we ever get information about the taxes that would have come in from the houses that are demolished to build multifamily housing?
I have done a lot of tax research. I did not research that piece. That's part of the information we could bring back when you have this conversation.
I would like to know what we've lost, not just, some people say, well, we're just losing future taxes, and that's important, but also those houses on Pearl Street, for example, that were demolished, I'm sure they were paying taxes before they disappeared. And I think that's something to consider. I'd like to list a list, too, of what taxes we're getting from the ones that have finally gone off the exemption. After 10 years, they do start paying taxes, right? And do they, sometimes do they get further exemptions because of depreciation after 10 years?
The data that I have from the tax assessor's office just indicates the taxes that were paid before and the taxes that were paid after. But we can work with them to start breaking it down into further detail if you need.
Okay, thanks. Then another question. If I will go along with not sunsetting this core area, but if we let it all sunset, we could start it again, could we, since the legislature has said it can go till 2022?
This is a state program that we choose to participate in by ordinance, and so that decision would be up to council.
So there's no urgency to deciding whether we should have other areas?
I think the urgency is in losing the momentum of the development projects that are sort of in the queue in the downtown area that meet all of our sort of goals within the Envision Eugene framework of compact urban development. So I think it's such a tenuous economic climate right now that we want to make sure we can do everything we can to encourage that to continue.
Aside from downtown, I mean,
Right.
there's no urgency in deciding whether we wanted to go out some other
I
corridors.
think there's not a time certain urgency. I think that in general we want to allow for areas where there's ripeness for a good project to go forward to not be prohibited because the tool's not available. So I think the sooner we get it in place, the better.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Alan, you're next.
Betty brings up an interesting question. So the way MUPD works is it exempts the value of the improvements to the land. The land still gets the property tax, but what happens to the old house that was there? Is that part of the old land, or is that not? That's not part of the land, so that goes away, and then there's an increment of improvements. So.
Exactly. And in fact, we can get that data from the tax assessor's office. They can show us what was on the roll, what was on the tax books before it was taken away and the new project built. So we have the ability to get that information.
On the assessed value.
On the assessed value. It's, they don't, the tax assessor's office does not track it in the most useful way possible in terms of this conversation, but we're working with them and we can bring that data back.
Okay. I, Councilor Ortiz, support this as a tool where it's necessary, and I think in the downtown core plan area, it is necessary, and I do not and have not for a long time felt that the West University neighborhood it's any longer needed there. And having lived over there, the number of units that have been built outside the MUPD boundary have outstripped by far the number inside the units in the last couple of years. In fact, most of the development, and I'd say it's at least 2 to 1, I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than 5 to 1, number of units that are built outside the MUPD without any property tax exemptions in that area for student housing mostly. And they were built without MUPD, and so that, in individual cases, maybe this developer can't do it, but somebody else could. And by way of example, I think all those other units that have been built around there make my point. I too question whether or not we should have the train song be in this part now. We added the train song in there for good reason, which was it's one of those areas that we felt where it was necessary to have this. And so having it carried forward, I think will add to some certainty in that area. I don't know if there's any particular projects in that area that are on the drawing blocks that would be submitted. They certainly couldn't get done in this year, but it kind of begs the question of how long would that delay be before we created the new one. That could be quite a long time, and we've already decided that the train song area should be included, so I'd be in favor of including it now and then having a conversation about the other areas in the transit corridors in particular. I thought that the legislation change that changed the sunset from 2012 to 2022, so 10 more years, was a good one because it allows the tool to be used. But the best part about it was that it allowed the mixed-use ground floor commercial. That presented potentially a lot of problems for projects in those transit corridors where we want commercial on the bottom floor with housing above it, so I think that. And then when you overlay the 20-minute neighborhoods, which is another thing we should overlay onto here, when we did those layers of things, the 20-minute neighborhood layers, one of the things is access to transit, but access to multifamily housing, and I think that should be part of the conversation as well, because that's a really interesting overlay when you start stacking those things up.
George Brown, you're next.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions and then just a couple comments. I don't have the maps in front of me. Left on my trip, so I'm going to ask a couple questions about boundaries. What is the west boundary of the West University neighborhood MUPD?
Let me see if I can pull up a map and answer that.
Currently?
Just Lincoln.
No, the west, I'm sorry, of the West University?
Yeah. University.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kincaid, is that it? That's,
Yeah, Kincaid, George.
Well, okay, and then what is the south boundary of the downtown? Is that 13th?
it's 13th until you get to High, and then it moves up to 11th.
Both sides of 13.
So, now what about the development that's currently going on at 17th and Pearl? Which MUPD zone is that in?
West University.
That's in in West University?
Yes.
I thought that the boundary was Kincaid. I mean, you said it was...
High Street.
It's actually high. You're asking a question, and may I use your council packet for just a sec, so I have the map in front of me?
So, George, that project's at Alder and 17th, and the boundary is 17th and Kincaid, so it fits within the West University boundary.
So does the 17th and Pearl.
The Mupti...
I'm talking about 17th and Pearl.
Okay, the Mupti boundary actually goes all the way...
Let's let staff answer, please.
The Mupti boundary goes all the way to Olive. That's different than the West University neighborhood boundary, but we're looking at the Mupti map.
Okay. So it's not in the university or downtown?
Maybe I have it right here. No.
Okay, well,
It's in Midtown, essentially.
And then, so the Tate is not in the downtown Mupti zone, but that's in the Midtown, and so the Tate received the Mupti because it was in this different zone?
The boundary was amended. We owned that property at that time, and we were looking to develop that property, so the boundary was amended to include that property. I think I can go back to the map in 2004, and then the Tate was the result.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm sorry, I think this was mentioned earlier in the meeting, but I have a little interference. So what are the current downtown projects they're waiting for a Mupti, and it would be bad for them if it was sunsetted before they do their project?
Yes, 858 Pearl and the Taco Time.
Oh, I see. Okay, sure. All right. Well, I just want to make a couple of observations. You know, we hear different things at different times about development downtown. Like today, we hear that the Mupti is, you know, will encourage mixed use, you know, multiple units on top and commercial down below. That's a good thing, and I agree it's a good thing. But then a couple of meetings ago, we heard about barriers to downtown development, which is requiring commercial on the bottom floor of an apartment. So, you know, we seem to be we're hearing two different things here regarding downtown developments. We've heard from the developers that that's a detriment to have commercial on the bottom as a requirement. And so, but then, you know, Mupti, of course, encourages commercial on the bottom. So that's just an observation.
So, George, I think Nan has something she wants to answer about that.
Sure.
It is difficult to require because it's an added cost. There are not just design costs and code issues, but we know that retail or commercial on the ground floor is often difficult to fill. When we require it in places where it can't be filled, it means that the developer is carrying sometimes an empty space, and something that we don't want in our downtown or really in any of our community. It is more expensive to build a project like that. So the idea is that Mupti now allows that portion of the improvement to be considered exempt. And I would add that the state legislature changed based on the way Portland was using it to encourage the commercial development on the ground floor, and then now it's available statewide.
I see. Yeah, no, I actually support that. I mean, if somebody wants to build an apartment house downtown, I'm all for them having a Mupti, and if they want to, you know, don't have commercial, because we still, you know, we have a lot of commercial spaces vacant, I'm all for that. I'm not opposed to that at all. So I guess I'd just like to make a couple comments. I'm all for sunsetting immediately, really, not even waiting until January, the university Mupti zone. You know, the whole idea of Mupti is to be used for development that would not happen, quote unquote, except for a tax abatement. And, you know, in a difficult zone where it's difficult for the developer to meet their costs and make their profits. And I'm all for Mupti in certain areas of our town. I think it's pretty clear, Councilor Zelenka has pointed out several times with good data, that development is happening in the university area anyway.
Thank you, George.
Is my time up?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, put in the second round then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be in support of the idea of extending the downtown Mupti zone. I will look forward to our future conversation around the West University Mupti area. I suppose I would hope that my colleagues will remain open-minded until we have that discussion in a more full fashion, and allow the discussion to dictate the decision-making rather than come to it made up. From my perspective, there's really two things that the MUPD serves as a value in the university area. One is the idea that, as has been stated, it allows for a development to be done which might otherwise not pencil out, and the market does dictate whether or not something gets built or whether it doesn't, depending on what rents can or can't be had. The market also dictates if somebody, for example, purchased land 20, 30 years ago, then the cost for building that particular facility, say outside the West University neighborhood area, might be significantly lower, and then it's affordable to build. Whereas if they tried to buy that land today, it would make it unaffordable without the MUPD. So I think some of those stats around what's been built and not been built with regard to inside the MUPD zone or outside of it in the university area need to have more fuller explanation, and I'd like that from staff to understand the difference in land costs so that we're actually having an accurate discussion about whether or not something is a marketable thing to build or not to build depending on the MUPD. But I would say it also dictates what kind of things get built. And so if you accept the assumption that things will be built one way or another, whether the MUPD is there or not, then we're really talking about what kind of things will be built, whether or not it meets with our goals and with universities' aesthetic and livability concerns. And so I've seen that the kind of things built in the university area with MUPD tend to be things that the university neighbors would prefer to have in their neighborhoods and create a more livable space. I have concerns around the idea that, we're with the Envision Eugene process, we're intentionally going to build more densely. More multiple units are going to be built in this area, one way or another. And so with MUPD, what we're talking about is what kind of things will be built. And my concern is that if we decide we don't want MUPD, we're still going to build things perhaps, but we're simply deciding to build slums. And that is of grave concern to me if the quality of what gets built is driven by the market and must be the absolute bare minimum because we won't incentivize the kind of things we'd like to see built there.
George Polling, you're next.
Well, I too am supportive of moving forward with the downtown core, but I would like to see the train song section of that be included in this conversation. I think it's important that we continue on with that because although there aren't any projects started in that area right now, it's because it's just recently been included and maybe the evaluations are still being done on that area. Mike covered some of the points that I wanted to cover. The MUPD is a valuable tool, one of many tools that we have that does address our council goals of capacity of growth and density of growth. The thing I like about it is the MUPD program allows the neighborhood associations to weigh in as far as some of the design standards and the way the projects are built. And the council weighs in on it on a case-by-case basis. And without it, I am afraid that some of these developments are going to end up looking like the old-fashioned type projects or eyesores, even though they may be new buildings. I mean, we look at some of the buildings that have gone up in the MUPD program, and they're nice-looking buildings. There's some thought put into it. Like I said, the neighborhood weighs in on it. There's some green features that have been added into it. Without the MUPD, who knows what they would have ended up with. So, I hope that we all remain open-minded about the entire conversation until the time comes for the final vote on this after the public hearings.
Chris, you're next.
Thanks. I appreciate the comments that have been given so far because it makes it easier for me. I agree we should include train song. That should definitely be a part of it. Yeah. I'm also appreciative of the fact that people are still very interested in keeping MUPD in the tool belt as one of the tools. I think that is an important step as well, as long as it's well used and provides a good incentive. To me, the whole discussion around MUPD is around the return on investment. If I'm going to invest tax dollars, I want to know I'm getting a good return on it. And return then becomes what it is we're trying to define. What is that return? And for me, three real significant impact areas are the impact on the neighborhood, the impact on the quality of the construction, which has already been talked about, and then what that impact is going to be on growth, which is where this relates to Envision Eugene. I mean, these are all dots that have to be connected, which is why I don't want to take unilateral action without really considering those implications. I think the proposal the motion that's before us right now is probably is where I could go right now, because I think it's still making an effort to try to be reasonable and thoughtful and deliberative. I don't want to act in haste and then have to go back and regret it or have to go back and fix it again. If we want to let the West University MUPTE sunset with the notion of looking at this in a broader conversation, I could probably get there. But I could get there, though, with the expectation that we would have a conversation about not just in West University, but all over town. Where does this return on investment really represent the best benefit for us? Because I have a lot of folks in that neighborhood, even though it's not my ward. I mean, I'm sure we all hear a lot from people in that neighborhood going, you know, with the zoning the way it is and with the development that needs to occur, am I going to have an 8-story building looking into my backyard? Am I going to have it? And I'm concerned that without the kind of financial incentives to allow people to build smaller buildings or buildings that fit the neighborhood better, in order to make them pencil out, they're going to have to be big and they're going to have a lot of apartments, and it may be difficult within the context of the neighborhood. I just want to know. I don't know if that's the case. I just want to know if we're creating a problem just as we try to solve another one. We're going to have to accommodate growth. And in one case, higher density, bigger buildings accommodates growth one way, but at the expense of other kinds of amenities and aspects. So I just want to be thoughtful. I want to be deliberate. I don't want to take unilateral action that goes too far, too fast. So I'm willing to support the motion that's here right now, knowing we need to talk about this more and consider just what those interconnected ramifications are.
So I'm hoping that we will, through this process, get to learn how to use the MUPTE more like using a scalpel as opposed to big hammer, machete or whatever. I mean, I'm just hoping that we'll learn to refine it in a way that is most useful to what we want to do and the goals that we have. So I'm going to ask you to think about, in terms of train song, that does not expire until January. Is it January?
January 1st.
January. So we could take time to talk about it. We'll be back in September. We can have time to talk about it and make a decision to not let it go out and do that before the expiration date. So we could definitely do what we're being asked to do today and do that and do it all in a timely way. So I just ask you to think about that. The MUPTE in West University is really interesting because I think, if I'm hearing what Alan's saying correctly, yes, there's buildings being built everywhere, and many more of them without MUPTE than with MUPTE. And so that would lead you to the conclusion that they're going to happen anyway. And so then that leads you to what George and Mike were saying about then what is it you're achieving by using MUPTE, and what is that allowing you to get that you wouldn't get otherwise. That's a fine scalpel kind of conversation. But I do think the neighbors think that the fact that MUPTE's there encourages more growth. And so there's some kind of thing about what is the truth. Is the truth that's going to happen anyway and we might get something a little better? Or is the truth that we wouldn't get as much if we didn't have MUPTE? I don't know the answer to that. I did hear this morning that and maybe you can scope this out, I did hear this morning that there was someone who developed a piece of a multi-unit dwelling in and out, and they each had the same features. One was not any better than the other one. So I would like to know if there is, what that reality really is. So something for us to learn and think about. Alan, you're next.
I thought you were going to say whack-a-mole hammer, not a machete. But,
I use that so much, I'll save it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't agree, Mike, that it's either we get great buildings with MUPTE or we get slums without MUPTE. That's not the question. I can show you pictures of buildings that are in and outside of MUPTE areas, and you'd be hard-pressed to tell me which one is in and which one is out when you look at the building in terms of the quality. I think that that the stuff that, some of the stuff outside the MUPD area is actually a higher quality than the stuff that's inside the MUPD area without any property tax exemptions. It's not our job to make sure that every developer can develop the property that they own. Our job is to stimulate development where it's necessary, and in West University, to me, it's just not necessary. The issues aren't around around the quality of the buildings in those areas. They're all fairly decent quality buildings in and out right now. The issues really are about on-site supervision. This is the issues with the neighbors mostly. On-site supervision or not, whether or not they have balconies, whether or not they have common areas and open space, and what the parking is around those things. So those are the real issues around the development, especially in the West University neighborhood. If we could get the number of units in and out of the MUPD area in the West University, SUNA, and Fairmount neighborhoods in the last 3 years, that would be very helpful. I'm also interested in, one of the things we did a couple of years ago is we added LEED and sustainability provisions to MUPD, and I think that was a good thing. I actually supported that, but didn't support the continued extension of MUPD in certain areas. But how would we be able to do that on our own and create our own tax exemption program around incentivizing LEED multifamily homes in and outside MUPD? Would we have the authority to do that?
The tax exemption programs is an authority given by the state. So, and we have MUPD, we also have the vertical housing mixed use. We've never used that in the city, but that's another state program. So the question is, could we develop a city program?
That incentivize LEED buildings based on tax exemption.
I might have to turn to Glenn on that one.
The short answer is yes, you could get there, but it's not really a tax exemption program. The only way to do that is to write a check each year to the property owner for the amount of property taxes that the owner paid, because state property tax is regulated by the state. The assessor takes direction from the state as to how the system works. So we could do it by simply doing it as a tax rebate program. Or
it would only be the city's portion.
You can pay as much as you want. It's coming out of the general fund. It's dollars in, you're paying back. Or you would need to go to the legislature and ask the legislature to adopt another program.
Okay. I'm interested in going there, so I'll be thinking about that some more too. And I'm also interested in the upcoming conversation about the linkage of MUPD and LEED to the transit corridors that we've got in Vision Eugene, and having that linkage more fully explored. I think those transit corridors are going to be really important for our development of what the city looks like, and having the right incentives in place and having the right strategies in place, I think, is critically important. I'm not sure where we are in terms of train song right now. I feel like we should extend that too. I understand we have some time, but I wonder if just adding train song to this right now doesn't confuse things.
I was going
or
to
make
add
it
to that,
easier.
that right now, I think what Andrea was saying is that some places that are might be helped by MUPD in that area are not currently included. So I think it deserves some thoughtful conversation before we decide
In
what.
geography?
Yeah.
No.
So I would advocate.
So not do it now.
I would advocate we have the conversation.
But that'd be like one of the first ones we talk about.
We always change the boundary later, though.
Yeah, right. Because we have the rest of the year, right?
Yeah.
Extend it now, but change the boundaries at the end of the year.
Yeah, we could do that. We could extend it to train saw and change the boundary.
Don't you want to think about it? Okay. George Brown, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, just a few thoughts I think that we as a council need to think about is we need to think about the city's financial situation. We need to think about the tax dollars we could be collecting from the university area by not granting these MUPDs. And I think we need to realize that the university neighborhood is probably the densest neighborhood already in the whole town. And it can get a little denser, but I think we need to spread it around a little bit more and maintain the livability of that neighborhood. I think we ought to keep in mind, I believe that the university has a larger responsibility for housing their students. I don't think it should all be left to private developers. I mean, the school I went to, campuses here in the Midwest have, it's not unusual to have 10, 15-story dormitories, a whole series of them. And I feel that the university could probably build student housing and, maybe stop upgrading and building new sports facilities and house their students. Enrollment will probably keep going up, and I don't think that should all be left for private development spilling out into the neighborhoods. That's something I think we need to keep in mind too. And I'm all for, I think it's really important to extend them, keep them up to going for downtown and train song. And we might want to look at the train song boundaries and extend those farther off Highway 99. I mean, these are, Councilor Ortiz is correct. These are areas that really are just kind of crying out for quality development. And so if we cut out of the university neighborhood, developers are going to go, maybe we could build something out there in Transong. And so I'd like to, I think Transong and downtown should be extended, but I really think it's time to let the university thing go. And I'd like, we have city building codes, and just because you don't get a monthly doesn't mean you're going to build a slum. You still have to build, a nice building, and people do that all over town without monthlies. So I guess that's about all I have to say.
Andrew, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's pretty interesting. I'm on the fence about putting in train song at this point. I would be more interested in taking a little bit of time, because we really need to look at the contiguousness of the boundary itself and that core area that is going to be transit oriented, and I hear such passion about the Chris, you were really articulate. You're just so great at describing what is in the university area, and I want that in downtown and out west. I want that kind of critical mass of people and the ability for to have students over there too, and to have people who choose to live in multi-unit properties, and because I think that would be a good thing for that part of town. And so I would like to see some of that migrate that way. And I don't know, I can't I don't have a magic wand to say developers come over here and do this, and I'll do this. But here's a little bit of an incentive. If you own property. I mean, a lot of those apartments on 6th and 7th are very old and dilapidated, and they're cheap rent, and I know they'd really affect, if anything happened to them, it would really affect a lot of people. But if the owners chose to upgrade them or to make them better or to add on to them, I think that would really be a positive thing in that community. I would look to, just for your information, Nan, I would want to start with the MUPD unit going down 6th and 7th, have it go to 8th and to 5th. In that area there, because there's a lot of because that really is kind of a commercial area. It isn't so much into the the neighborhoods. I mean, there's a lot of businesses on those in that one area. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
On both sides of 99.
On both sides of 99? Yeah, absolutely. That would be great.
Mike?
I could, I could agree on waiting to add the train song area in until we have a further conversation about that. That's reasonable, and a better conversation about having a more refined look at where that makes sense. The interesting part of this discussion for me is, as we move forward with it, the next work session will be around both of the pieces of whether or not something gets built, and then what kind of thing gets built. I think those two questions are really critical, and I think that the MUPD absolutely does affect those. I'd really like to have the statistics, for example, of the last time that MUPD went away, from 96 to, anybody help me out? 2001. So let's look at what got built while MUPD was in place, and then when it went away from 96 to 2001, how many things got built, and then when it came back, how many things got built. And let's have a more accurate assessment of the idea of, does this help affect what does or doesn't get built? Let's have a better conversation about drilling down on each of the individual projects and saying, is it really more about, if the quality of one project inside and the quality of one project outside, if all things are truly equal, then that is an interesting question of where's the difference in the MUPD going. But my suspicion suspicion is that not everything is equal in both of those cases, where one may have a considerably different land cost, because at the end of the day, the whole process of what gets developed is driven by the market and driven by economics. And when you look at it that way, we can't say it's time to stop building stuff in the university area. The demand will increase. More students are going to come to the University of Oregon. We are deciding as a council and with what we do to build more densely in our core. So more definitely, we are going to have a demand for more housing in that area. That's independent of what we do. So for me, as I said, the question becomes, what kind of things are we going to build? We know for a fact that we're going to have 15,000 at least new dwelling units in our community in the next 20 years. If you average that out by counselor's ward, that's 1,875 new dwelling units on average per ward. And with the university there, I would be willing to bet that it's well over 2,000 new units in the next 20 years that are going to get built in that area. So and the demand is what it is. So we really are having a discussion about what kind of things we will see built and whether or not we'll allow for the neighbors to have the kind of input on what gets built that they should have.
I'm going to ask Betty to put a motion out here in a minute,
Yes.
but I wanted to make a couple observations. One is that times have changed since the 90s, so you got apples and oranges that you're looking at. But I would also say, just because I feel like I must, that the university at one time was saying that they want to get out of the housing business, but that has changed. And now they are saying that they were going to try to house all their freshmen and sophomores on campus, and they're building big, huge housing facilities there. So that's changed too. And the other thing is that during this recession, for developers, irrespective of MUPTI, the only kind of building you could get built was student housing, and that's what they could get the financial backing to do. So that's why probably more than anything, that was the incentive for why such a large amount of development happened in that area, driven by what people could build. So those are just a couple comments on that. And then I think, I don't know whether that's part of the MUPTI discussion or something different than this, but honestly, our students are a permanent part of our population. They are not a transitional part of our population. They're not going to be gone tomorrow. They're here forever. And so we need to have a conversation about where do you want their student housing to be? Where would you like to see, if it can't all be, if we care so much about our close-in neighborhoods and they can't take it all on, where do we want to encourage it, and how would we do that? What's the right place for more student housing to take place? To me, that's almost a better discussion than how you keep them out of places. It's where do you want it, and what would that look like in our ideal world? So I think we need to have some kind of conversation about that. Betty, you want to put a motion out?
I do. I just want to say that some things have been built that people wish weren't built.
That will forever be so.
Well, especially in the university neighborhood, but I'll do the motion. I move to direct the city manager to proceed in two phases. One, prepare an ordinance and hold a public hearing to extend the sunset date for the existing MUPTI boundary area in the downtown area. And two, conduct additional work sessions in the fall to discuss other priority areas for council consideration and future action.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Alan?
I'm wondering if it shouldn't say in the downtown plan area as denoted by this map, or is it clear enough? Is this the map, the boundary that we have here says the downtown plan area?
That's a good clarification. That's the intent.
Because that's
This
that
means
white
the
line,
area
right?
we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay.
white line.
Okay.
Accepted.
Okay, that's where we are.
Right, and just one more point about university housing. Good point, Mayor. There's a project going on right now, George, right near my house, actually. They're building 3 4-story tall dorms that are housing freshmen. They should be done for the September upcoming year. I think it's about 300 new units, and they're planning on potentially doing more than that.
All right, so we're ready to vote? All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. George Brown.
Yes.
7 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. Thank you for the beginning of a very important conversation.
Good. So pleased.